Hey class, welcome to week 5 of e-learning here, remote learning. Nice job last week with solving the quadratic equations, or solving quadratic equations using factoring trinomials and factoring out the GCF and the zero product property. All right, so this week we're going to continue solving these quadratic equations, but now we're going to look at them by graphing. All right, we're going to solve it both by looking at a graph and by doing graphing on your own using some technology here. All right, but first we're going to start off with a little warm-up. All right, so this is kind of a review from last week. All right, so we need to solve these trinomials by factoring. Right, we're going to find the factors of our last term that add to that middle term, and then we're going to factor the quadratic equation and then solve both of these. All right, so why don't you go ahead and pause the video here and try factoring and solving these two equations on your own. All right, now let's see how you did here. All right, let's see. So for the first one, we get x squared plus 6x plus 5, right? So that means we want to find factors of 5 that add to 6. Well, factors of 5, I just have 1 times 5, right? Those are my only factors of 5. And 1 plus 5 equals 6. So those are my two factor pair. Or that is my factor pair that needs to go into my parentheses. All right, so it's going to be x plus 1 times x plus 5 is equal to 0. Right, and now I'm ready to solve these equations now that I've factored it. Right, so to solve again, I set each one of these equal to 0, and I solve. So we get x is equal to -1. Right, and then I do the same thing with my other product here. X plus 5 is equal to 0. I subtract 5 from both sides, and I get x is equal to -5. So those are my two solutions. Hopefully you got something very close to that, if not exactly that. All right, so now let's try number 2. We have x squared plus 8x plus 12 is equal to 0. All right, again, we're going to find the factors of 12 that add to 8. Switch up. My factors of 12 that add to 8. All right, so my factors of 12 are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. All right, so out of my 3 factor pair, I'm going to use the 2 and 6 because 2 plus 6 is equal to 8. So again, now I'm ready to factor this. So we get x plus 2 times x plus 6 is equal to 0, right? And now that I factor this, now I'm ready to solve these two equations, right? So again, I set each of these products equal to 0 and solve. So x plus 2 equals 0, right? I subtract 2 to both sides, and get x is equal to -2. And I'm going to do the same thing with this x plus 6. Right, I'll set that up equal to 0. I subtract 6 from both sides, and I get x is equal to -6. So those are my two solutions for warm-up 2. All right, so now it's time for the new stuff. All right, so now we're going to look at some graphs of a quadratic function. All right, so the graph of a quadratic function, or the x squared, right, because that x squared makes it a quadratic, are called parabolas. All right, and they're in the shape of a U. So these are the graphs, the quadratic equations from the problems in the warm-up. All right, so these two graphs below are the graphs from the equations from the warm-up. All right, so we're going to look at these graphs, and then we're going to identify from each graph the x-intercepts, right? And the x-intercept is the point where the graph crosses the x-axis. All right, so we're looking for the point where the graph crosses the x-axis on both of these. All right, so if we look at graph A here, right, this is that y equals x squared plus 6x plus 5, right? That's the same as warm-up number 1, right? So here's my x-intercept, right? And where does this graph in blue cross my x-intercept? Well, it crosses it here, and it crosses it there. All right, so what are the values of x at those two spots? Well, this value is -1, and this value is at -5. Oh, those two numbers sound familiar. Let's look up here. Oh my gosh, what we did for example 1. We got x is -1, and we got x is -5. Oh wow, so those are my same exact answers, or my same exact intercepts in the graph. Interesting. All right, well, let's see about b here, right? So here's the graph of b. It's y equals x squared plus 8x plus 12. All right, again, my graph is in yellow here. Here's my x-axis. And it looks like it crosses at 2 points as well. It looks like it crosses at x is equal to -2 and x is equal to -6. All right, those are my x-intercepts. And look at that, those are my two solutions, x equals -2 and x equals -6. Oh, wow, that's interesting. Coincidence? I think not. All right, so what relationship do you notice between the solutions in the warm-up and the x-intercept from the graph? Well, the relationship is they are the same, right? They are the same value. They are the same. All right, so that's the relationship, right? The x-intercepts are the solutions. All right, so the solutions or the zeros or the roots are also known as x-intercepts. Right, all those words kind of mean the same thing when we're talking about quadratics here, right? So the roots, the zeros, solutions, or x-intercepts, they all mean the same thing. All right, so let's do a little practice here together. All right, we're going to look at these three graphs, and we're going to see where their x-intercepts are, and then identify the solutions. All right, and each one of these units on the graph is going to be just one. All right, so let's look at our first graph A here. Right, again, here's my graph, and it looks like I have two x-intercepts right there and there. All right, it looks like my x-intercepts are at -1 and at +1, 2, 3. So therefore, my solutions are x equals -1 and x equals 3. All right, let's look at graph B here, right? So here's my graph way up here in red, right? But here's my x-intercepts, or here's my x-axis, right? Does my graph ever touch my x-axis? No, it does not. So does it have an x-intercept? No, it does not. Right? None. It does not have an x-intercept, right? So when a graph does not intercept the x-axis, I have no solutions. All right, it has to cross that x-axis to have a solution. All right, and then the last one here, C, right here's my graph again in purple. It crosses my x in two spots, right? It crosses it at +2 and at +4. So therefore my solutions are x is equal to 2 and x is equal to 4. Awesome. All right, so now it's going to be time to do some graphing on your own here. All right, or graphing together here, and then you'll practice graphing on your own. All right, so by hand, right, to graph, you solve a quadratic equation, right? We're going to use a given graph, and we're just going to see where does that graph cross that x-axis at. All right, the other way to do it is with a calculator. All right, so to graph the equation, we're going to follow these steps here. All right, we're going to use this app Desmos. All right, so we can go to desmos.com to do our graphing. All right, I have it linked right in our Schoology page, of course, right under the resources and materials for week 5. You'll find that link, right, and there it is at the top. Right there's that Desmos link. All right, and I'll also have it hyperlinked in the homework as well. All right, so once we go to desmos.com, we're going to type in the equation on the line. All right, but we're not going to type in that equals 0 part. We're going to leave that off because if we do type that in, it's not going to graph it for us, right? It's just going to be 2 lines there. All right, and we'll see that here in a minute. All right, so after we type in the equation without the equals 0 part, we're going to hover the cursor over the points to find the x-intercepts. All right, and once we find the x-intercepts, we're going to find our solutions, right? And then if we need to, we can zoom in and out using the zoom in and out buttons to see the graph. All right, so here are the directions, right? We're going to solve the following quadratic equations using Desmos.com, and then we're going to write the solutions on the line, and we're going to include an image of the graph using a screenshot or a similar tool. All right, so we're going to practice these together, and then when we're done with this, you're going to do some practice graphs on your own. All right, so let's look at the first one. We have x squared minus 11x plus 28 equals 0. All right, so we're going to go to Desmos.com, and we are going to hit this start graphing. All right, so now we can see our box here. This is where we're going to start typing in our equation. X squared minus 11x plus 28. All right, so it's going to be x. Okay, how do I get that squared part? So all right, to get that squared part, we can pull up this keyboard. And here this a2 is going to be the squared. All right, so we get x squared minus 11x plus 28. All right, so plus 20, that wasn't plus, so go back. And there's a plus 28. And look at that, there's our graph. All right, and if I needed to, right, I can zoom in and zoom out here. Let's get this thing out of the way. Here we go. Right here, my zoom in, zoom out. All right. And now if I hover my mouse over these two spots, I can see my two solutions, right? My x-intercepts are at 4 and 7. So that means my solutions are x equals 4 and x equals 7. All right, and I'll show you really quick what happens if we equal 0. All right, look at my graph. Now I just have two straight up and down lines, all right? So that's why I don't want the equals 0 part. I just want the expression without the equals 0 part. All right, so I said my solutions were at 4 and 7. So then I can go back in here and write my solutions of x equals 4 and x equals 7. All right, but I also want you to include a screenshot of the graph, okay? So to do that, all right, I have the snipping tool, which is really handy. All right, so I'm just going to use my snipping tool. If you have something like that on your Chromebook, great. If not, you can just take a screenshot of your graph and include that into the homework, all right? So then I just copy and paste it, and there's a graph, and I'm going to make this a little smaller, and I'm going to put this in the right spot. All right, so I'm just going to drag this over, and there's my first graph of x squared minus 11x plus 28. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing for my second graph, 2x squared plus 5x minus 7. All right, so I'm going to clear this out. I said 2x, I'm going to keyboard up on here, and use this little a squared button to get that squared. So 2x squared plus 5x x minus 7. And there's my graph. So I can go ahead and hide the keyboard. All right, I can't really see the bottom, so I'm just going to zoom out just a little bit. And here we go, right? We can see our one solution is, or my one x-intercept is negative 3.5, and my other one is at 1. So those are my two solutions, right? So I said x is equal to negative 3.5, and x is equal to 1. All right, and I also need to include a picture of this. All right, so again, you can use a screenshot, or if you have some sort of snipping tool, and make sure you get a nice little picture of it. I want to see the bottom of it, and kind of see both of those x-intercepts. All right, Control C. I'm going to go ahead and paste it in here. All right, so make it a little bit smaller. There we go. All right, and I got one more graph here. I got 3x squared plus 2x minus 8. All right, so I clear that out. We got 3x. Again, to get that squared, you can open up your keypad here in the bottom, and here it is at A2, 3x squared plus 2x plus 2x minus 8. And there's my graph in green now. All right, and then again, I'm going to just hover the mouse over and find my x-intercepts. All right, looks like it's at negative 2 and positive 1.333. Right, so that means those are my two solutions, right? X equals -2 and x equals 1.333. So x equals -2 and x equals 1.33. All right, just two decimals is fine for these problems here. All right, again, I'm going to use my little snipping tool, or you can take a screenshot and get a nice picture of the graph. You can see the U shape and the x-intercept. And put that on there. All right, and that's how you graph and solve quadratic equations. Or that's how you solve quadratic equations by graphing. All right, so now it's time for you guys to do some practice. You can look for practice 8.3 in Schoology.